Hi everybody, in this episode what we're going to be looking at is me trying to fix one of my old Spectrums here, because I'd like to get this going to be my main sort of usable Spectrum, but it doesn't work. There are at least two things wrong with it. First of all, the keyboard doesn't work at all, and secondly there seem to be some RAM problems with it that I need to work out exactly what's going wrong there. How am I going to do that? Well, actually it is through the Spectra Plus 128 interface that I've shown you previously. So I'm using this for two purposes. First of all, I've got the SCART output. Let's unhook the power lead there. I've got the SCART output so I can see what's going on, but more importantly I've got the programmable ROM cartridge there so that I can upload a diagnostic ROM onto that and use that ROM to find out what's going on with the Spectrum. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Well, I've plugged in the interface, everything is ready to go. I've got the power lead here ready to plug in. Just before I do that, one thing about this ZXC4 programmable ROM cartridge that I'm using is the fact that if there's only a single program on there, it will just load and run it straight off the bat. I don't need to use the keyboard, which is really quite helpful when the keyboard doesn't work. So let me plug this in and just see what it comes up with. So we've got various colourful displays while the lower 16K of RAM is being checked out. Okay, so lower 16K is a pass, upper 48K or 32K, upper 32K is a fail there, as we can see. And then it's told me which chips are problematic ones, IC 15, 16 and 17. So really helpful diagnostic program that not only is finding that there's a problem but telling me where to look for it. Those three ICs seem to be the ones that are problematic. So that's where I'm going to look next. Just before I do that, let me just give a call out for this program. As you can see at the bottom of the Speccy screen there by D. Smith and B. Alford, this is all available online. It's open source software, ZX Spectrum Diagnostics, and you can see the URL there if you want to find this for yourself. I just think this is a super helpful piece of software that can identify at least some of the faults that Spectrums tend to develop. It won't detect everything if the CPU, the Z80 on the board itself isn't working. Well, it's not going to find that, is it? But most of the things that a Spectrum can go wrong with can be identified here, and you might have noticed just when it started up it came up with a message on screen about pressing various keys to test specific aspects of the Spectrum. So it's not just this RAM test, it could do other things as well. Maybe we'll look at that at the end. If I can get the RAM working and the keyboard working, maybe we'll come back to that and just check everything else, like the ULA is working properly. But I think the next thing to do is for me to open up this Spectrum and get to work on those RAM ICs. I've got some replacement ones here, so hopefully these will do the job. Okay, so the case is loosened. I can very carefully pull the keyboard back, and in fact Look, it's broken straight off, so that explains what was wrong with this keyboard. In view of that, let's just remove the other side. There we are, so I can take that off entirely. I do have, by the way, a replacement membrane here, so I can replace that quite easily. Let's get it the right way around, like that. But let's not worry about that for the moment, because really that doesn't matter if this isn't working. So quick look around the motherboard. These are the RAM chips for the lower 16K of RAM, and then we've got the upper 32K here. So it's these chips that are problematic. And what did that diagnostic message say? I think it said IC 15, 16, 17, which I'm not sure if you could see there just above my finger. It's on the silk screen. See if I can get in a little bit closer. That's 15, 16, 17. So it's these three chips here that seem to be the ones that are problematic. Luckily they are socketed, so that does make life a little bit easier. But what chips are these? Well, the Spectrums were based on RAMs from two different manufacturers, either Texas Instruments, and their code numbers begin with TMS, which is what we've got here. These are Texas Instrument chips. The other one is OKI, which start MSM. First of all, you can't mix up those manufacturers, so the rest of these RAMs are from Texas Instruments, TI, so that's what I've got to replace these ones with. The second thing is, although this is only building up 32K RAM, these are 64K by 1-bit RAM chips. But you know, why is it using 64K RAM chips, 8 of them, and only coming up with 32K of RAM? Well, the answer is the Spectrum was built at a time when RAM was still really quite expensive. And these are 64K RAM chips where one half of the chip has a defect in it. Either the top 32K or the bottom 32K. And they've actually been binned according to which half is still functional. Now, if you read the code on here, and I appreciate this might be a bit small to see on your feed, but this is a TMS 4532 20NL4, and it's the 4 versus a 3 that designates which half of the chip is working. So when I replace these, one option is to find the same chip, the TMS 4532 20NL4. It has to be a 4 because the rest are 4s. If I put in 3s instead, it won't function. So that's one option. The reality is, though, that I found it quite hard to find exact replacements for these. So the next best thing is to replace them with 64K by 1-bit RAMs, recognizing that the Spectrum will only use half of that chip. The other bank of 32K, if you like, won't get used at all, but that doesn't matter. The fact that it's non-functioning won't stop anything working. It's the working half that I'm interested in. So that's what I've got here, and it helps if I hold them the right way up. So these are the 64-bit RAMs, TMS 4164, in my case 15 as opposed to 20 nanoseconds NLs. So that's what I'm going to use, see if replacing 3 of those with 3 of these fixes at least the RAM aspect of this Spectrum. Let's get to it. Okay, so the RAM chips are out. I think the best way to do these kinds of things is just to take it slow and steady, not try and remove too much of the chip, leave it up too much in any one turn, if you like. Just steady movements, and I think it is easier when you insert the screwdriver on one end, or a penknife, something like that, is to rotate it clockwise or anti-clockwise rather than lifting up, levering either up or down. I think turning the screwdriver, just using the blade of the screwdriver when you're rotating it is a better way to remove chips from sockets so they don't get damaged in the process. And the reason I was being quite careful there and taking that in lots of steps is because it's just possible that those RAM chips are in fact okay, and it's some other fault with the motherboard that I need to sort out, and I might want to use those chips again. So it pays to be careful, also protect the sockets a little bit, just so that they aren't damaged in the process. So I think the thing is, take your time, be careful with it, and be patient. So here are my RAM chips. Let's take them out and insert them, and make sure I get them the right way round, which I have here, and put these in. Okay, quick inspection. They look like they're all seated okay. I haven't bent any pins in the process. They're all the right way round. So that looks like those are okay. I bought these RAM chips as used, but confirmed working, guaranteed working. So hopefully, if there are any faults, it's not due to the replacement RAM chips. So I think the thing to do now is let's plug in the interface again. There we go. And let me pan you up so that you can see the screen. And turn this back on again and see what happens. Has that fixed the RAM fault at any rate? So the usual colourful screen startup, we passed the lower 16K, upper 16K is pass. Excellent. On the walk test, inversion test, good. March test, random test, test passed. Excellent. So that seems to have fixed the RAM issue. I now need to sort out the keyboard. Let's just wait for it to finish. See if that tells us any other diagnostic information. Paging in the Spectrum ROM, having passed an interrupt test. And here we go. And it takes me back into the classic startup message. Alright, so that seems to have been successful. The next step is the keyboard. So let's take a look at that. The final step then seems to be to sort out the keyboard, and you might recall as I took the top off I snapped the keyboard connector here, so I've got this little sort of shard of keyboard membrane tape that you might call it has broken off. So one thing I could do is replace the entire membrane, and you know, I've got a spare here, but actually what I'm just thinking about is, can I still use the old keyboard membrane? And if the issue was this connection here, which has since broken off, is that going to be too short still to use that end bit? If the rest of the keyboard and this connector here are okay, maybe at least to begin with I'll try and use the old membrane and keep that spare one for something else, and see if I can just resurrect this, albeit that this bit of ribbon tape here will be quite short. So if I ever open up this case again, I'm going to have to be quite careful not to put stress on this, but maybe that is a solution. And I don't know if you can see here, but the tape sort of has two parts of it, a sort of the conducting bit here, and then a backing tape. So what I need to do on this end, I think, is just to see if I can separate out the tape. Oh, there we go. And just get the conducting bit. I don't know how well you can see that there. And just see if that will work. So let's give this a go, see if it works. I won't have lost anything if this fails. But, difficult to do this when I can't really see what I'm doing very well with the camera in the way, but let's see if I can slot that back in. These keyboard connectors are notoriously a problem to push the little ribbon here, ribbon tape in to get it to connect, but at the same time not bend the tape itself, which would tend to break the connections. So question of just getting exactly the right amount of force and in the right direction to push it all the way in without kinking it and breaking it. So I think that might have done it. Now, I appreciate that might not have been very much to look at while I was trying that, but let's give that a go and see if that works. So again, plug in the interface. Let's move you back to the screen so you can see what's going on. So this time, if I can get there quick enough, what I'm going to try and do is, on the opening screen, is hit one of the keys on the keyboard just to see if I can interrupt the main RAM test that starts up automatically with one of the other tests. And I can't exactly remember which shortcut keys do what, so this might be a bit hit and miss. No, so that didn't work. So maybe somehow I have goofed up on the keyboard, plugging the keyboard membrane back in again. So maybe I need to do this off camera when I can see it a little bit more clearly what I'm actually doing, and try that again, because I'm not convinced that there is an inherent problem with this membrane. I think it is just that edge piece that broke off. Let me try it again and see what happens. Well, I must confess that I am defeated by the old keyboard membrane. I've been working on it for quite a bit, and although I can get one or two of the keys to work, actually I can't really get most of them working, and it would seem like it's a lost cause. What did I do? I actually shortened the other side, the right hand side ribbon cable a little bit, because that looked like that had a crease in it. So now I've got both ribbon cables that bit shorter, which makes it even more fiddly to fit. That didn't improve things. I cleaned the ends of the connectors with the this fiberglass pen here, took away a lot of the tarnish which might have been interfering with the connections. That didn't help, or not, it didn't solve it at any rate. It maybe improved it a little bit. And the more I was plugging in and unplugging the connectors, the more there was the danger of actually bending them so much that they would break. So I think in the end I give up. So I have removed the membrane from the lower half entirely, and I think it's time to replace that completely with the new membrane over here, and see if that fixes anything, and we don't need that little offcut either. Right, first thing to do if you're replacing one of these membranes is to remove the metal keyboard template, you might call it. You have to be quite careful in doing that not to bend this too much, because it's quite thin metal like that, and if you lever up one side you can bend it quite a bit, so you've got to be careful, but you know, it's not a difficult job. It's simply fastened down by double-sided tape, as far as I can tell, along both sides and the bottom. So lever that off. That's then frees up this bit, which is the rubber membrane bit with all the key functions printed on it, so we can take that out, and then we get the membrane itself. So I can now remove that, and as you can see, the cables just fit through slots here in the plastic upper half of the case housing. Now look, interesting there that the protector on this cable has broken there, so that might indicate that actually not only was there a problem at the other end, there was a problem at this end as well, which might have snapped some of these signal lines, which might have been why fiddling around with the other end didn't solve all the problems, because if there's a problem here, it doesn't really matter, does it? So let's take that out, maybe have a closer look there. Yeah, it certainly doesn't look very happy there. Difficult to tell whether that really is a problem area. Yeah, certainly it's probably too small to see here, but there is a sign of definitely a crease, if not a break in some of the tracks there. But if you just look at the natural shape of that, that is pretty creased. This one looking a lot better, can you see it's got a sort of curve to it. That one is a big angle, and these connectors, especially as they get older and more brittle, do not like angles like that. So get rid of that. Start again with our new membrane. That can just slot in through the same slots and fit over there. Back with the rubber cover that we all love so much, like that, and on with the outer. Now I might just rest that in place for now and fit it back properly once I've shown that this actually works, rather than put it all very carefully back in place and then find out that there is some other problem with this computer. So carefully slot that in there, and this time I really will try not to put a kink in any of the ribbon. See if that's that side. Certainly easier with longer lengths of ribbon. Once you start shortening those, it gets really pretty tough. Okay, I think that's it. No, it's not in at all. This right hand one did not go in, so let's try that again. This goes to show how careful you've got to be, and it makes you wonder, you know, how they did it in the original factory, when no doubt they were against the clock in churning these things out. Okay, so at least in theory I think that has connected up, at least temporarily, the new membrane. So let's get back to the screen and see what happens this time. So we're into our RAM tests. And yeah, as previously, they're all passing, so that's good. It'd be a bit concerning if they suddenly started failing again. Just let the interrupt tests work their way through. and then this should trigger a system reset. And here we go. Okay, so back to the normal Spectrum screen. Do any of the keys work? Yeah, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like the top row is working. Yeah, second row, third row. And enter, which of course doesn't do anything. Let's just try symbol shift, so that's working. And the bottom row. Oh, caps, what can I do? Let's try left arrow. Yeah, so that's working. So that would seem to have done the trick. Let's just restart this ROM and go into the keyboard tester here. So perhaps it's not entirely helpful, but kind of you have to hold down K as you start the machine with the diagnostic ROM in to get into the keyboard tester. So that's why K is lit up on the screen here, is because I was holding down K. But now I can try the keys in here. E, I missed it. And yeah, as we saw in just in the normal ROM, these are all working. So it looks like we've got it fixed. I just need to tidy up the keyboard, get that all fixed up properly, and then put the case back on properly. But otherwise it looks like we've got this Spectrum back up and running fairly simply for the cost of a membrane and some RAM chips. Neither of those particularly expensive for a rubber keys keyboard like this one. The membranes for Spectrum Pluses, 128K toast rack Spectrums, seem to be quite a bit more expensive, I guess because they're a little bit more unusual than the rubber key ones where there are gazillions of those. Not very expensive. It's saved this Spectrum for a little bit longer and means that I can use this as my main day-to-day one without worrying too much. You know, it's not in the greatest of standards, in greatest condition, so if it gets a bit trashed with me using it, that's not a big deal. Overall, that seems to be a successful outcome, and certainly using this diagnostic ROM seems to have been a big success. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon on my next video. Bye for now.